It's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Parshat Noach, the original covenant. Very often there's a significance to the first time something is mentioned in Tanakh. And here the word covenant, brit, berit, is mentioned, bris. It's mentioned for the first time, not the bris of Abraham, not the bris of Sinai, but the brit of Noach, of humanity with God. And when we have this word the first time, we need to understand what is this word from. Ibn Ezra gives two major theories. One is that it comes from the word like karat or batar. Batar means like the brit ben abitarim, the covenant of parts, where you part something, you split something, you cut something. You always korate brit. What do you do when you make a covenant? You always cut it. You cut the deal by cutting animals in half, as they did with Abraham. You cut the deal by sprinkling half the blood here and half the blood there, as they did in Parshat Mishpatim. You always have to cut something in order to make a covenant. We even say in English, you cut a deal. So it comes from the word batar, which means to split or to cut, and the words switch, the letters switch. Not batar, but barat. Batar, barat is the same letters, and they switch around, beis reish taf, and that's what brit means. It means to cut. However, the Ibn Ezra suggests something else, which I think is very significant, and that is, he says, maybe it means, it's like from the word beru. Beru is to choose. In Shmuel Aleph, the Goliath says to David, choose a person. Come on, choose a person, come fight me. Who's going to fight the giant? No one wanted to fight. David finally fights, but beru lachemish, choose for you a person. So the brit comes from the word choice. Interesting. Why would it come from the word choice? Here we get to a point that Rabbi Soloveitchik mentioned, that there are two types of covenants. One is a brit goral. Sometimes you're sort of forced into a covenant. You know, two people are together on a wrecked ship, so they're forced into a covenant. Gilligan's Island, they have a covenant of destiny, of fate together. What are they supposed to do? And then there's a covenant of yi'ud, a covenant of choice, of destiny, of two people deciding they're going to go in a certain direction. One might argue that with Abraham, it was a covenant of fate. You know, whatever happened to the Jews, that's what happens. And as Jews, we are in a covenant of fate. You know, if the anti-Semites decide they want to destroy us all, every Jew is locked into that together, religious, secular, ultra-Zionist, ultra-secular, atheists, all linked together, Hasidim, because we share that covenant of fate. But we can also, our covenant can be a covenant of destiny, of yi'ud, of people choosing to be together. Ultimately, a covenant is between two parties. You see, you might think a covenant with God, it's very one-sided. God is God, and we do what He says He wants us to do. No. The covenant with God on Sinai was two-way. We had to say, Na'aseh v'nishma, we're going to do it. We're going to listen to what you say, we're going to do it. We had to agree. Now, may have been forced to do that or whatever, but to some degree, we had to agree. It's a real covenant. It's like a real a covenant between two people, like a contract between two people that decide this is what we're going to do. And therefore, the word brit comes from choosing. However, if you look in Rashi, he says, well, you know, what do you need a covenant for? God says to him, look, you make a boat and you'll be saved. So he says, well, but the covenant is, maybe the food that I'll store for the animals will be spoiled. Maybe when I make that boat, all the wicked people are going to kill me. He says, no, I'm making a covenant with you. In other words, for Rashi, the covenant is so that he will survive. And then after they get out of the boat, God says, I will fulfill this covenant. I will fulfill this covenant. What does that mean? So he says, I'll fulfill the covenant that you and all your descendants will not be wiped out by another flood. But it took Noach's involvement. We always accuse Noach of being very passive, but to some degree he built a boat. Let's give him the credit. He did something to save himself. So, in that sense, he was part of that covenant of destiny, where he chose to do something. He was in a brit, or beru lachem, where you choose to be in the covenant. Noach chose, yes, I will listen to God, and I will build that covenant, that ark even though there were detractors, according to Midrash, they were saying, what are you doing, you fool, what are you doing? But he listened to God, and he built that ark because he was part of that covenant. The covenant with Abraham also requires some skin in the game, so to speak. Sorry about the pun, but an actual Brit Milah, to actually do something, to make sacrifice in order to get the land of Israel. It requires an input from us as Jews. Mount Sinai, of course, is the ultimate Brit, where we stand there almost as equals, that we're two parties in an equal covenant with God. It's hard to imagine, hard to believe, but Rabbi Soloveitchik describes it that we stood at Sinai in a covenant with God. What a privilege to make a covenant of equals with God. We're not equals at all. But the Zohar says, Yisrael v'Kudsha Bricha, right? It's Echad, the Torah and Jewish people and God, it's all one. There's this tremendous a link between God and his spouse, so to speak, the Jewish people, and we entered into a covenant. We know that every marriage is a covenant. It's by choice. People choose their spouse, and each spouse chooses each other, and they decide that yes, utzfiat marat plonit batulta da, that this woman agreed. It says in the Jewish ketubah that the woman agrees to be in this marriage. The man says, "You are hereby betrothed." She accepts the ring. He gives the ring. And with that, they agree to go into this covenantal relationship. And again, there is a responsibility from each part. We, the Jewish people with God, are also in a covenantal and a spousal relationship with God. God is compared to a spouse, a lover of the Jewish people. We love him and he loves us. And therefore, this is that covenant of destiny that we share with God. The covenant in the days of Noah involved very little input. He just had to build a boat. He had to show up. He had to get in that boat and just show up. And the animals were brought in. With Abraham, there was a little more involvement. At Sinai, we became full partners with the Taryag Mitzvot, the 613 commandments, the 10 commandments, that we have things we have to do and things we can't do. And this is a real covenant. In the Garden of Eden, the word breed is not used. Some people think that it was a covenant with Abraham. No. Not explicitly in the text. Adam was not in a covenant with God. That was a later achievement of humankind. That with Noah, we reached a level of brit, of covenant. With Adam, it was one-sided. God said, "Don't eat this," and that's it. But here we begin the process of being in a covenantal relationship with God. And a relationship almost, so to speak, as if we can't even say the words, but some sort of equal relationship where we are equally responsible to choose God and he chooses us. You elevated God to be special and he elevated you to be special. It's that kind of relationship. We have to put into the covenant. You can't just show up and say, "What can Judaism do for me?" The question is, what can you do for Judaism? What can you do for God? What can you do for Torah? What can you do for the people in the land of Israel? This is something that my good friend, Rabbi Avi Goldberg, he lived, he lived this covenant. He put in, he didn't have to, but he showed up to the Miluim, to the reserves, and he served as a rabbi in the army of Israel, in the Israel Defense Forces. And unfortunately, he was killed this past week. May his memory be a blessing. May he remind us all of what we have to put in. He put in love, devotion, joy, and effort in helping to bring Jews and people around the world closer to God, closer to Torah, to understand the covenant. And surely that memory will be a great blessing. All the things that he accomplished in his life to bring people closer to Torah, to love Torah, to fall in love with the Torah and the Jewish people. This is part of Brit, part of input, Jewish input into the covenant, putting ourselves out there, volunteering, doing for the Torah, for God and the Jewish people. That's what a Brit is. That's the covenant. If we do that, hopefully God will keep his part, and hopefully we'll have peace. Shalom al Yisrael. Shouldn't be any more deaths, any more war, and we should be able to live peace and harmony in the entire world, and in that covenantal relationship with God, and reach our ultimate destiny, where God will be one. We'll have time and peace of mind to ponder the wonders of God in this world. We thank you for joining us here at the Baron Hirsch Congregation. Thanks to Jason Lefkowitz, our producer. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah. with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.